Welcome to the Coffee Journeys show, hosted by me, Piotr Zagorowski, author of the Coffee Journeys blog. In this show, I'll be sharing my journey from being a technical person to a leader and discussing topics such as leadership, technology, and intentional living. I'll be sharing my unique perspective and insights and offering guidance on how to develop the skills and mindset needed to succeed in today's world. Whether you're an aspiring leader, a technology enthusiast, or simply looking to learn more about the world around you, this podcast is for you. So, join me for the engaging and thought-provoking conversations on leadership, technology, and intentional living on the Coffee Journeys show. Welcome to another episode number 6. We are going to talk about how to hold people accountable. But before we go to this topic, I would like to thank you a lot for great feedback and some questions after recent episode number 5. During episode number 5, we talked about the responsibility process. Actually, this episode number 6 is extension of the episode number 5. Is going to be properly shorter because one of you asked a very, very good question. And again, thanks a lot for great feedback about this podcast. And this is constant request. If you have any feedback, good or bad, anything to fix, let me know. You can find me on Twitter or email, and the best idea is to go to coffeejourneys.blog/about. Everything is there. But going back to our conversations about responsibility process and how to be accountable, how to hold people accountable, I'm going to give you a very, very TLDR what happened in episode number 5. In fact, you can pause it and go back and listen to it if you haven't done yet. But for people who haven't listened, just TLDR. So in previous episode, we talked about the responsibility process. This is model developed by a gentleman called Christopher Avery. And the process aims to help us to take responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, and actions. The model is based on the idea that taking responsibility, it is a process, and it provides a framework for us to go through this process because everyone behaves the same. We all start with something we call denial. Then we go through several stages, being denial, blame, justify, shame, obligation, and finally responsibility. There's one more called quit. I discussed everything in previous episode. I highly recommend going back. But basically, it is how we all behave. And the previous episode is telling us how to do it quickly. So we want to operate on the stage called responsibility, where we are able to respond and take full responsibility and full ownership for our actions. I'll also give you some quick exercise how to do it. But one of you asked, okay, if I am already in the right mental spot and I am responsible, I can see that something is not right. How do I actually hold people accountable? And this is what we're going to discuss in this episode. And I'm going to start with some personal story, and then we will go through very, very quick 3 stages exercise or process how to hold people accountable. So let's dive into my personal story and we will go from there. It was a long time ago, and at this time I was not very fond on trekking. And yet I was there, exhausted but happy. I was on the top of the mountain, and I was with my friend who convinced me that going for this journey with me is going to be a good idea. And it was, to be fair, but I wasn't very fond on trekking. I want to stress it. So to our surprise, there was actually a place where you could buy a food on the top of this mountain. It was back in Poland. So my friend asked me, did I want anything? And I said something like, yes, probably just bring me something, or something along these lines. And he disappeared. And a moment later, he was back with a juicy, beautifully smelling burger. He brought me nothing. So I was furious and I blame him. How could you? We are just dying here and you didn't think about this. And long story short, some years after this episode, I realized that it was me who was wrong and being furious on him. And there is the right way to hold people accountable. We are going to go through this process just now. It is actually a tricky topic because to hold people accountable, I need to be in the right mental spot. And I'm going to recommend you one book called Extreme Ownership. This is a very good book on this topic. The author, Jocko Willink, writes about habit of taking full responsibility in every situation. Droidella, can you tell us something about Jocko and his book Extreme Ownership?
Jocko Willink is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL officer, podcaster, and author. Willink is the co-author of the book Extreme Ownership, How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win, published in 2015. The book, co-written with his fellow SEAL officer Leif Bourbon, outlines leadership principles based on their experiences during their time in Iraq. The main topics covered in the book include taking extreme ownership of everything in your life, including your mistakes and failures, developing a culture of ownership and accountability within your team, prioritizing and executing tasks effectively, even under high-stress situations, leading with humility, while also being decisive and confident, communicating clearly and effectively with your team.
Okay, thanks. Maybe we can add a few lessons that we can learn from this book?
Sure. 3 main lessons from the book include: 1. Take extreme ownership. Willink and Bourbon emphasize the importance of taking responsibility for everything in your life, including your mistakes and failures. This mindset allows you to learn from your mistakes and improve, rather than making excuses and blaming others. 2. Develop a culture of ownership and accountability. Leaders should encourage their team members to take ownership of their tasks and be accountable for their actions. This creates a sense of unity and teamwork within the group, and ultimately leads to better results. 3. Prioritize and execute. When faced with a complex task or mission, it's important to break it down into smaller, more manageable steps. By prioritizing these steps and executing them effectively, you can accomplish your goals even under high-stress situations.
Yes, fantastic. And going back to my story, I wasn't clear with my friend. And he didn't bring me anything because I was frustrated, I was tired, and I was not specific. He asked me, but the answer could be interpreted as just go away, I'm struggling here, I'm tired, I'm dying, and so on and so on. So if he brought me something else, something that I didn't want to, it could even escalate. I mean, that was clearly my fault. But let's assume we are in the right mental spot. We go through all the responsibility process stages and we take full responsibility and ownership. And now we want to address someone else's shortcomings. What is the right way to hold people accountable? It is simple but not easy, and it consists several steps and a few questions that I need to answer. First of all, I need to know what I want. If you remember the story from the beginning, I was just vague. I was very hungry, very angry, and I just said something very, very obscure. So my friend did not read my mind, obviously, and he just did what was the best option. So what if he brought me something wrong or there's something that I didn't like? Obviously, it wouldn't be good, and it was on me. It was my fault. So now, let's think about implementation to business. We can imagine a situation when we ask someone, can I have this report tomorrow? And it seems very fine and very clear. However, if you are in Europe and let's say this person is in Canada or USA, tomorrow starts to begin very vague and you need to be precise. You can say something like this. Can you send me this report that I have been working on with you together by the end of your day today so that I can have it tomorrow, my time. It's important as I will be presenting and I need to prepare. This kind of request is more specific. It says exactly what I need, why I need, and if they can do something for me. That leads to another question. Did I ask them? It is classic for so many scenarios. In my story, I could have just said, buy me whatever you are buying for yourself. Instead, I thought that my maybe means already asking for a favor. To implement this to business, you can ask yourself, how many times we say we should have this report, you should work more productive, and many other vague half statements, half wishes. To be able to hold people accountable, the right way we need is to be specific with our asks. Droidy, can you tell us the template how to ask people specific question?
Sure, Piotr. Here is the example of the possible template on how to be clear when it comes to asking people for anything. Can you insert the action by exact time by which the action is going to be done? Because why it's important for me. Why I am asking for the action and specify the time.
Yes, exactly. So, to repeat, it should be something along this line. Can you insert the action here by exact time when this action needs to be actioned? Because, and insert why it's important for me to do the action by exact time. And there is another question that we need to ask. Did they agree? Because it doesn't end here. So far, it's one-way communication. Even if I'm very particular and I express why this thing is essential to me, I still need to hear from the other side. In my story, I could have just asked my friend very specifically what I wanted, but he could say, I don't have that much money on me, or you need to come with me, and so on and so on. In business situation, I just cannot assume the job will be done because I was very specific with my asking, and I should wait and confirm if it's clear and could be done within the requested time frame. They need to agree. And when all these three things are done, I can finally hold people accountable. Because in majority of situations, if you follow these three simple steps and check these questions, the job gets done. There are, however, circumstances that something will not be completed, and in these occasions, I still need to take full ownership of the situation. Maybe my instructions were not so good and clear. Perhaps the other person had some different challenges and I ignored to see them. Especially if you are in managerial position. People may struggle, quiet fights, and we don't know what's in their head. It is an art of providing constructive criticism. It is a topic for separate podcast episode. I will cover it. But I think to summarize, I can say the right way to hold people accountable is this. Hold people accountable, but behave the same way you wish people hold you accountable. Do to people what you wish people do to you. Droidy, let's summarize with a few bullet points what we've been talking about today.
Let's summarize the lessons learned during this coffee journey. There we go. Do not assume people will read your mind, instead be very specific with your asks. Do you know what you want and do you know how to express it? Did you ask them with a particular request, time to accomplish and why it's important? Did they agree to complete with all parameters, time, scope, and so on? Holding people accountable is an art, similarly to providing feedback. Own it, even if they failed. Maybe your instructions were not that good?
Yes, exactly. And this is basically the end of this episode. We are going to wrap up here, and I'm going to repeat because it's very short but powerful framework. So to hold people accountable, we can follow these stages. Do I know what I want? It has to be clear in my head what I want from other people. Did I ask them? I need to express what I need. That's why this step number 1 is important. If I know what I want, I can ask them what I want. Now, the following one is, did they agree? It's not only important to be clear on what I need, and there is a specific template how we can ask about this, but they have to agree. Especially in a team where there's different culture background, there's different languages, we may be talking about the same thing but in different ways. They have to agree with their own language that they understood. And finally, we hold people accountable, but the lesson here is do it to others what you would wish that people do to you. Feedback is another good topic that we'll cover in coming weeks. And this is all I have for you today. I value feedback a lot. That's why I ask you to review my podcast in your favorite podcasting platform and give it as many stars as you think it deserves. By doing so, this podcast is going to be more visible and I can reach more people to provide value. And before you go, if you would like to join the community of people who are determined to help each other and grow together, join my newsletter at coffeejourneys.blog/newsletter. Thanks for tuning in today, and until next time, have a great day.